Before you get to the financing, you need to make sure the home you're buying won't put you in the poorhouse. Home Inspector Mike McDowell takes us on a tour of what you should pay attention to before you make an offer on a house.
What would you sort of look at first?
Well, the first thing I'm looking at is major problems with a home. Not that you run into them, but you have to look for them. Looking for a sag of the roof line, outward bowing of the walls. You know, although the home here looks in beautiful shape, one of the things you can see on the garage, it is actually racked a little bit to the right, and if you look up the left corner, the garage is actually tilting in. So we do have a structural problem with the garage. But the home itself from the exterior looks good. So now you start things that are much more subtle. How does water penetrate through the building materials? So you're looking for water penetration through the roof or siding anywhere. Since this is a combination of brick and wood shingle home, and then it also has an architectural grade asphalt shingle for the roof material, you look through for the penetrations, the dormers, the vent pipe, the chimney, the ridge vent, anything that penetrates the roofing, then anything that penetrates the siding.
Before they even start the inspection, the first thing that happens is Mike will sit down with each client and go over a detailed list of what's involved in an inspection, give the prospective buyer an understanding of what's to take place, and then ask the seller to answer some very important questions. Then it's on with the show. Mike is all about information.
This is where you add water into the boiler, and we'll label it for him. So it has a nice
and it's this thorough approach that has won him accolades and spots on state boards and regulation committees from Westfield to Boston. He's not only by the book, he's written the book. Today, we asked Mike some of the questions you might ask before you plunk down thousands of dollars for your first home.
What about the things you can't see? Did the home have an oil spill? Did any kind of hazmat, anything along those lines?
The things you can't see really are things that are unknown. You really don't know. One of the things that I gave my client when I met him is that questionnaire that I'm mandated to tell him. And on the questionnaire that the state requires me to tell the buyer to ask some questions of the seller. It is a full disclosure state. So you are asking those questions about underground tanks, any storage, any type of issues, and that's covered in that questionnaire. Sometimes you can get an idea of what may have happened around the house by looking for things that might be showing up. You might see an oil fill pipe out in the yard indicating an underground oil tank. Even though you can't see underneath the ground, you know the tank's there, especially if there's a fill pipe. But when you go inside, you have to see, is it still being used oil, or if it's not being used. Oil tanks that are not used in Massachusetts are considered to be abandoned. Per 527 CMR, another regulation tells you abandoned tanks have to be removed, whether they're inside the house or outside the house.
Okay.
Here you're looking at a curved gutter,
yep.
But the downspout is actually rotted out and is missing. It used to be attached right here. You can see a bracket that is just hanging loose.
Yep, got it. And the paint. You notice the paint right there?
Yeah, here you're seeing some mold growing on the exterior paint. You can see some peeling paint. So you need to do some scraping and painting. Here's just sight down the garage.
Yep.
You can see the garage is actually leaning right here over. So it is racked a bit.
Yep.
That is an indication of a structural problem. So we shouldn't see things that aren't square, sagging down the roof lines, things that are racked one way or the other.
Right.
Something happened to allow this racking. And I'm sure it had to do with the large two-car garage opening without properly framed or braced on the inside. So.
Once we take a tour of the outside of the house looking for mold, siding issues, peeled paint, we head down to the basement. And this is usually the place to see just what has gone wrong in the house and how things might have been repaired or not.
Oh, so there's the oil tank.
Here's an oil tank.
Right.
But one of the things you can just see is they just converted the heating system to a gas-fired steam boiler. So now we're looking at an abandoned oil tank. Under that 527 CMR, since they did the conversion, they have 24 months in which to get rid of the oil tank.
Okay.
Now here's an oil tank that has to be removed.
Got it.
And basically the seller usually ends up doing that. And as you can see, it's a full floor joist. It's an older house, 1920s vintage. And the floor joist, taking the load from the subfloor, transfer it directly onto a sill plate. The sill plate is very solid. And on the other side, it transfers it onto a girder. And what they did on this girder is a technique where they use a ribbon strip or a ledger board, and they notch the joist, so the load from the joist goes onto the ribbon strip, ledger board, and then onto the solid girder. Excellent framing technique. By doing this, it also keeps the ceiling height fairly tall. so it doesn't drop down with a girder underneath the joist. But the framing here is solid.
Very nice.
Basically as solid as the day it was built.
Very nice.
So very, very well framed house. Here's a replacement steam boiler, not that very old. So this is a new boiler. And the gas line comes down, feeding the gas valve. This actually has electronic starter, so it doesn't run a pilot. The pilot goes on and off electronically like a high efficiency gas stove today. So it only goes on when it needs to start itself up. It has a sensor that will make sure there's draft to make sure to allow the fire to continue to run. If it doesn't sense the proper ignition, it shuts the unit off as a safety feature. Okay. One of the things we noticed on the exterior was some of the grades didn't pitch away from the foundation walls. They were flat, and in this area, they were actually pitching towards the foundation. As a result, surface water goes into the ground and come down subterranean, hit the footings, and begin to seep in. Well, obviously, it's been a problem in this house for a while. Even though they tried painting the walls, you can see where the discoloration and the efflorescence is coming through the walls. It's that same moisture migration that's coming in through the walls. It got so bad in this house at one time, somebody broke the original, even though they painted the floor, cracked the original concrete floor, and put in a trench with some piping, some stone, some new concrete. They left the concrete short from the edge a little bit, and that wraps around to the sump pump that's in the other corner.
All right, so this looks kind of brand new here, isn't it?
Right. The rim joist insulation with Isolane does a great job insulating. Well, there's three main areas for people to really save money and reduce their operating costs. When we're talking an older home especially. So an existing home, the three main things you want to make sure is done well. And first, it's attic insulation. Attic insulation has to be done well. The opening into the attic has to be done well. So a scuttle or a porthole has to be weather stripped and insulated. You don't want to be able to feel a draft coming down through a whole house fan or a scuttle in the closet. So everything gets insulated and you have good attic insulation. Today we're shooting for like an R38 value in attics, which is a lot of insulation. That's like 12 inches of a fiberglass insulation bat, for example. So if you only have 6 now, you might want to double it. Just don't put a vapor barrier in between. But after attic insulation, it's usually exterior windows and doors. So that's where it comes to, should you update windows, you go to thermal pane windows, should you add storms, should you replace drafty doors with new doors or just re-weather strip them. You want to pay attention to all exterior windows and doors second. And then third is the quality of the heating plant itself, how energy efficient it is. Most heating plants, if they're older, you get something in the range of 25 plus years of age, chances are you should be updating it if you can afford it. Because just by updating the heating plant, you can save money and save operating costs. And those are the three biggest areas you can do to save money on an older home. Attic, windows and doors, and heating plant itself.
Now, the final frontier, the attic.
So what you're looking at here is newly insulated attic. And what the homeowner chooses to do is to insulate directly against the sheathing with a expandable foam insulation, happens to be by Isolane, and it's an outstanding way to insulate her attic. So she insulated all the roof, exterior walls, around the rough opening of the thermal pane windows, thermal pane windows in the attic, and now she's able to pick up this additional space when she puts down her walls and ceilings as an additional portion of living space in the home.
There's no draft at all.
None
at all.
Now with this foam insulation, it's outstanding insulation value. So it's a very excellent way of insulating a home. It costs a little more than standard insulations, but in the long run, the homeowner felt it was well worth it.
If you want to ask Mike a question or get him to do a home inspection for you, it's easy. Just give us a call at 413-530-6139 or just head to our website,